This is important, folks. Kremlin says U.S. has declared economic war on Russia. The Hill, House to vote on stopgap measure to avert government shutdown. Defense News, U.S. nuclear forces chief very concerned by Russia-China cooperation. Financial Times, Russia's close to sabotaging the Iran nuclear deal. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. Fox News, Russian official says Iran got much more than it expected in revived nuclear talks. Axios, Pentagon rejects Polish plan to give fighter jets to U.S. to supply to Ukraine, which was an interesting move. They were the Poles were willing to give up their MiGs, but they wanted them not to go directly to Ukraine. They wanted to send them to us, the United States, in Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, and then move them to Ukraine. And this is how war starts at an escalated level.
The assessment that it's one thing to provide ammunition and other types of support to the Ukrainians over their border. It's another thing to provide jets, and that the Russians will make a distinction. And that Poland's the first place of a NATO country that's likely to get hit as Russia tries to bomb these resupply complexes.
What's the way out? What is the way in which you can get this situation under control so that at the end of the day, he can claim some sort of victory? Is it no NATO ascension? Is that enough? But I'm wondering, and you were the DNI, based on, and don't disclose anything, obviously, but based on your knowledge of this guy, Putin, is that going to be enough? If Vladimir Zelensky says, I'm not going to request extension into NATO.
For you and I, an off-ramp seems logical. It seems like maybe you could calculate you overreached and now you've got a safe face. That is not going to happen with Vladimir Putin. He is, let me just be very clear. He's in a different state. And we cannot subscribe rationality to him. If we could, Bill Burns, who is the head of the CIA and who was ambassador to Russia, would have been able to somehow maneuver this before we saw a bloody war unfold. But we're not dealing with a rational actor, and that's the whole scary part here.
If you're putting America first, what's the best thing we should be doing? What's the best outcome?
The best outcome would be to completely replace this White House and diplomatic team and put somebody else in. But they put us in this terrible situation where we have to answer questions like this, like what now after all of this time? We wouldn't be in this situation if Donald Trump was in office. But I have to say, I'm against a no-fly zone. I'm against trying to escalate this with the Russians.
Me too.
But if Putin crosses into a NATO member country, Article 5 must be enforced, and that's a red line that we cannot back away from.
You said in a tweet this morning, Putin cannot lose in Ukraine if he wants to stay in power. I fear he will do whatever it takes to break the Ukrainian people from chemical weapons to landmines on humanitarian routes like Russia has historically done in Afghanistan and Syria. What is your assessment on where we are in this war?
My concern is this is obviously not going to plan for Putin, and Russian Soviet Doctrine is they compensate for their lack of ability to conduct precision strikes and maneuver with just pure brute force. If you look at what they did in Chechnya, Afghanistan, and Syria, it was literally bombing hospitals, sowing civilian areas with landmines. Some were disguised to look like toys so that children picked them up. Even the use of chemical weapons, it is literally to break the back of the resistance. I fear this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
You're the one that sat in the room with this guy, with Vladimir Putin. He's 13 days into this war. He hasn't taken Kyiv yet. He's trying, getting closer. He's not done. His troops have not performed well. And I'm trying to figure out, do you sense there is any off-ramp for him to stop this aggression?
He knows at this point there's no back for Vladimir Putin. He has so much blood on his hands. What he's done, the atrocities that have been committed under his orders are of such a level, they're so egregious. You cannot imagine him being back in the G7, back in the G20, invited anywhere. He will be a pariah. And for that reason, my sense is he's going to demand an awful lot before he calls off the dogs of war.
What does an awful lot look like? Does it look like a new government in Ukraine?
It looks like what his true objective was, which was to gain political control in Ukraine, whether that's with the current leadership, with his guys really pulling all the strings, or a completely new leadership, probably immaterial to him. In the end, what he has wanted for a long time is the capacity to say, I've restored the great Russian Empire. I am now controlling this. I think that's his ultimate objective. He's going to stay at that until one of two things happens. One, he either achieves it, or second, he no longer has a combat force capable.
Putin is trying to establish the old USSR. Let's not kid ourselves for a moment. Can we get an off-ramp? We need to be thinking about that. We should always have one. As we said, it should have been planned. But this is complex stuff, and we're playing 9-dimensional chess here with the world waiting.